Morning everyone, my name's Hingy Lee and I've been at Telefónica Tech for quite a short period of time, but I've actually been working in IT for over 20 years. You probably already guessed I haven't been doing Copilot for Microsoft 365 for very long because it's only been around since November last year. But hopefully I can tell you a bit about my experiences, our Telefónica Tech experiences about Copilot for Microsoft 365 and give you a bit of an insight on how to keep it secure and what it can do for you and your productivity. So got a photo of me taken by James in marketing, but just for fun, I actually asked Copilot to create an image of me. Some of you probably know that Copilot uses DALL-E in the background, an image generator, and this is what it came up with. So it kind of looks like me. I don't have those glasses, but that's something that you can do for Copilot. We're not talking about creating images as part of this anyway. We're going to talk about your work and your data. So first things first, I'm not going to go into the history of AI. There's plenty of blogs, articles about history of AI, history of ChatGPT, how Copilot came about. But what we are going to talk about is what Copilot for Microsoft 365 is, or give its full name. It's actually called Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. So what is Copilot for Microsoft 365? It consists of several components that are all integrated together to enhance your productivity and creativity. But the core building blocks are large language models, the Microsoft Graph API, the apps within Microsoft 365, plus it actually is web aware, so it can get data from the internet as well. So there are other Copilots, but we're going to concentrate on Microsoft 365. The other Copilots are Copilot for security, Copilot for sales, and there's a number of other ones, but there's actually also one called Copilot for Copilot Studio, which is included as part of Copilot for Microsoft 365. I'll get licensing out of the way now, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty of what Copilot is. So to begin with, Microsoft had an early adopter program. Companies had to be quite large to actually have Copilot, but it signed up, people signed up and it filled up really, really quickly. Then you needed at least Microsoft 365 E3 or E5 and 300 seats to purchase Copilot. That's changed now. It's a minimum of Microsoft 365 Business Basic or F1, O365 E1, or if it's education sector, it's the A3 license or greater, and you don't need 300 seats anymore. And pricing is approximately £24.70 per month, and that's a per user pricing, but you have to have a 12-month commit. So as I said before, Copilot Studio is included in the license. I'll go into a bit more what Copilot Studio is during the presentation. So I'm going to show you a quick diagram of the architecture of Copilot. So it's quite simplified, this is, but there's a lot going on in the background. So the large language model that's on the page there, it isn't a single large language model. Microsoft Copilot uses a combination. So you'll all have heard of ChatGPT and OpenAI. Well, Microsoft work very closely with OpenAI, and at the moment, Copilot for Microsoft 365 uses GPT-4 and GPT-4 Turbo. Some people say it's the Prometheus engine, but Microsoft reserve the right to put whatever they want in or their secret source, but that's currently what they say is there. We don't really need to worry about that because that, as is any cloud platform, will be updated and improved as we go on. So the Microsoft 365 service boundary is quite an important part of this diagram. Your data will not leave your tenant. The large language model that's in there is yours, and your data won't train it, and it definitely won't train the public large language models. So that's one of the key differences between using one of the other copilots, one of the consumer based copilots, and Microsoft Copilot for Microsoft 365. This is only available to business users, and it's focused on business. So Microsoft decided to commission a number of reports to get an idea of how much investment was required into AI. And you probably already know that ChatGPT took off massively at the start of last year. And it didn't take long before Microsoft started developing their own offering. So while asking people what sorts of things they would require from AI, a lot of the respondents basically said that they needed something to help with productivity. Time-consuming jobs was something they didn't want to do. And if AI could help their work by reducing the workload and menial tasks, that would be great. The Work Trend Index report is the result of the early adopters program, and it overwhelmingly showed that people said that their work was improved by Copilot and didn't want to not have Copilot. I'll go into this in a bit more detail. There's a bit of text at the bottom, which is the references, but I'll give you the URL for it later. So a lot of people are a bit worried about Copilot. They're worried about what Copilot can access and whether using Copilot is suddenly going to expose your data. The main thing is that you could expose your data by not having the correct checks and measures in place, the correct permissions, the correct security in place, but Copilot will not exacerbate that, because what can Copilot access? It accesses whatever you can access. It completely respects the security of your Microsoft 365 tenant, and everything is done in your user context, so it won't access any other data. So what does that actually mean by anything that you can access? So anything that you can access actually means anything inside SharePoint. So when you go to a SharePoint site, a SharePoint repository, the lists that are in there, the files that are in there, if you can access it, Copilot can access it. So your OneDrive, any of the files inside your OneDrive, and also, more importantly, if someone shares files from their OneDrive to you and you have permission to it, Copilot can access that. Then there's everything inside the Graph API. So by inside the Graph API, we mean your conversations inside Teams, the channels that are inside there, the files that are inside there, Outlook, what emails you have, the meetings you have, but also how you interact with people, how you interact with meetings, how much time have you spent doing things, and your organizational structure. So being able to understand who you work with and who reports to you or who you report to is very important for Copilot to be able to help with your productivity and your day-to-day tasks. Other data that Copilot can access, third-party data. So anything that someone from another organization has sent you and has sent you a link, so you can access that. And also any plugins. So people might use things like Trello inside Teams or Poly. So if they're inside Teams and you have access to them, Copilot has access. So let's look at what we should do to strengthen our security so that Copilot is safe for you and your organization and your data. So Microsoft recommend applying the zero trust principles, and these are 7 layers of protection. So I'll go through these quite quickly, but then I'll deep dive into one of the areas which I think is key. So first things first, data protection. So there's no point having data and then saying that your data has been lost if you're not actually protecting it properly. So purview information protection can apply labels to sensitive data, and once you've got those labels on there, you can have protection on there to prevent the data being read by people who are not supposed to, and prevent things such as people forwarding it onto someone else. Then there's data loss prevention, prevent any accidental leakage of data or even malicious leakage, people trying to siphon off personal information, financial information, etc. Next thing, your identity and access. So if your data's safe, but someone can impersonate you, they can access your data. So the usual things apply here, really. So multi-factor authentication, blocking legacy authentication, conditional access, sign-in risks, the things that you would do anyway to protect your identity and protect people logging on as you, or even escalating to someone who's got even more access than you have. So next thing is app protection. So a lot of you probably use apps on your phone. You've got access to company data, but you might actually have other apps on your phone, such as Facebook, WhatsApp, and so on. So one of the really important things to do is to make sure that corporate data can't be shared using one of the other apps. So if you're using Microsoft 365 apps and using Outlook, and you've accidentally kept something in your clipboard, you paste it into Facebook and you share it to the world, that's not great. But we can easily manage your data by using the managed apps inside Intune, so that anyone who's got company iPhone, company Android, that sort of accidental leakage is prevented. Next thing, the devices themselves. So patch your devices, have encryption such as BitLocker, make sure that your devices are managed in terms of having a set of approved apps and having central management so you can do things like wipe a device in case it's lost. Next thing, threat protection. We don't really talk about just antivirus anymore. It's anti-malware, anti-phishing, anti-spam, attack surface reduction. Whole host of products inside Defender to help you with this, but also something like Windows Hello for Business. If your device doesn't have a password hash stored on it and people can't overlook or look over your shoulder and steal your password while you're typing it in, then that's more secure because it's using some biometric like your face or your fingerprint. Next thing, secure collaboration with Teams and the minimum user permissions data. So I put these together mainly because Teams data, SharePoint data, they're one and the same. But if you're sharing things with people in Teams, make sure you choose the correct permission. Don't just send anything to anyone and let anyone with the link access it. And then if you do need any additional security for your SharePoint Advanced Management Plan 1 with Microsoft Syntex can help add permissions using users and groups for your data. So I'm going to move on to Purview, two very important products inside Purview to protect your data. So first things first, you do need to understand what data you've got, what sort of sensitive information types you've got, whether your data is classified, confidential, personally identifiable, financial data, and so on. But being able to then classify your data, you then label it, and then you can apply protection to it. So maybe the HR department are the only department that should be looking at payroll data. Maybe the C-suite are the only people who are looking at potential merger that you're having with a competitor. There's loads and loads of data that your organization has that not everyone needs to see. The main thing is that you should only really be able to see the data that you need to do your job. The other thing is that Purview data loss prevention can help prevent things such as someone accidentally emailing out a passport number or someone actually sending something out to your organization maliciously by actually taking credit card numbers apart or taking your financial data apart and sending it through in lots of different emails. So DLP policies, they use the same labels as Purview information protection and can greatly help reduce that risk. So let's look a little bit about Purview information protection and get an idea of how that interacts with Copilot and what it actually looks like. So first things first, we do want to configure a label because inside Purview information protection, some of you probably already know this, but you have classifiers, then you have labels, then you have the protection that you have on them. So I'm not going to do a live demo of this because those of you who have been using Purview information protection know that it takes quite a while each time you create something. So I'll just show you some screenshots of what this looks like. So this is the Microsoft Purview Compliance Portal. This is a normal tool. It's not a Copilot tool. This is what you'd already have if you were using Purview. And we're going to create a new label for something called Project Obsidian. So this is the same demo tenant that Microsoft would have used at Ignite, and it's the same information that we're going to have inside here. So first things first, we create a new sensitive information type, and the information type just looks for the word Obsidian. Then the next thing we need to do is we need to create a label for Project Obsidian. So the label that we're going to create is going to have certain criteria, certain policies applied to it, and we're going to assign permissions to it, and it's only a single group that has access to this because it's a single group that uses this data working on this project. So we're going to apply that sensitive terms label that we had earlier, which has got Project Obsidian in, and then at the bottom you'll see that we want to automatically apply the label when we find that. And here are the properties for Project Obsidian once we've created the label. So we've just created a label. We're going to automatically apply it to files and emails. Let's see what this looks like when we start using the data. So fictional person, Alex. Alex is going to start accessing the data. You probably already know what's going to happen because those who are evil-eyed will know that I was actually Alex when I was creating those labels, and Alex actually owns all the documents, but let's see anyway. So here's the SharePoint site for Project Obsidian. At the top of the site, you'll see it says private group, confidential Project Obsidian, and the sensitivity also reflects that. There's not a lot of documents in here, but this is the SharePoint site for Project Obsidian. So Alex is going to open one of the documents. This is design update, and at the top, you see it says confidential Project Obsidian. Alex had accessed this document because he is a member of that group that has access to the Project Obsidian labeled documents. So now we're going to ask Copilot, do you know what the important documents are for Project Obsidian? In this case, Alex has actually got the permissions required. As you say, it says a document authored by Alex Wilbur. So the documents there, along with a synopsis of each document, and each of the little numbers is a tooltip, and it tells you what the document is and where it got the information from. Then the documents are listed below, and you can actually click on those and access the documents. So you can actually start asking Copilot to draft documents, and if those documents actually have sensitivity labels applied to them, your Copilot content will also have the same. So I'm going to just show you a recording of what happens when Alex starts asking it to draft this FAQ using this document here. So first things first, I'm going to type in a prompt, and we're going to ask Copilot to use DG2000 product specification to create an FAQ. That shield appeared as soon as that file was referenced because the file is a sensitive file. And then at the top, next to it says document for Word, there's another shield which will change to show you what the actual sensitivity label is. So we'll say generate a short FAQ. And then if you look at the top, you'll see that this changes from general. It takes a bit of time because the content is going to start appearing below. And then the labels appeared and the sensitivity banner has appeared. And this is the document that's created using that FAQ, using that DG2000 product specification. So one thing to note is that this isn't Project Obsidian because it says confidential anyone, unrestricted, but it satisfied the criteria for purview information protection to apply sensitivity label. One thing to bear in mind though, getting Copilot to generate content based on labels that you've created, you do need to test. Sometimes, depending on what criteria you have, it was more complex, it might not actually find the label. Being able to classify things automatically, you have to balance between protecting your data and having a lot of false positives, which will really ruin the end user experience if everything they're trying to do, it keeps labeling it as something they don't have access to. So document created, you can now keep the document, or you can press the little recycle button, it'll generate the content again. I'll show you later what that looks like.
Hey, we just got a question here.
Yeah.
Someone has asked that they've seen previously in Copilot, if there's a document and the document is set to has the shared with anyone in the organization with the link, it's only accessible to them if they've actually used the link. So would it, do you understand the question there? So would
Yeah,
that be,
so
do they have to click the link in order to be able to access the document?
yes, so if you don't click the link, then Microsoft 365 hasn't done a thing which is like verifying the link and then accepting the token. Secondly, if you don't click the link, it doesn't appear inside your Graph API. So even if you've got permissions to something that's outside your organization, it won't appear in your Graph API until you start accessing it, because otherwise it will have to start trawling through a lot of data. There is something called the Graph Explorer that you can use to find out what you have inside there, but that's quite complex, but it can give you a really, really good idea. So if you're using Copilot and you actually want to find out what can Copilot access, you open Graph Explorer and you change it from the demo to your own authentication, and it will show you what it can access, which is the same as what you can access. So
Great.
I hope that answers the question.
Yes, it does. Thanks.
Brilliant. So move on to something to do with Project Obsidian now. So we're going to ask it to write a FAQ on Project Obsidian. So Alex typed in that prompt, and this time, because it's got the word Obsidian in, it's found the label confidential Project Obsidian and it's applied that. Again, your mileage may vary depending on what you're using for the auto labeling. So we're going to be Diego now. Diego's the chap on our right, and Diego isn't part of the Project Obsidian team, so he isn't part of the group. So this is what happens when he tries to access the SharePoint site. So really, really boring slide for you. Nothing to do with Copilot. This is what it looks like if you try and access something you don't have access to in SharePoint. So next thing, because he sat somewhere near Alex and he heard Alex talking about Project Obsidian, he thought, do I want to be part of this project? So he says, what is Project Obsidian about? Copilot can't find anything about Project Obsidian because Project Obsidian doesn't exist inside the Graph API when under the context of Diego. So this is what it comes up with. It is extremely accurate what it says. You really don't want it to say something like there is such a thing, but you don't have access. That would defeat the object of this. So this is the experience you'd get if you try to access things that you don't have permission for. So just sum up a bit about how Microsoft Copilot uses your data. So it completely respects all your permissions. It uses everything that you've got inside Microsoft 365, and the tenant is the boundary for it. And the other thing is that your data is processed in the region that you are in. The other thing about protecting your data is that Microsoft do subscribe to responsible AI. So this is supposed to be something that isn't restricted if you're having difficulty using it. You can use all the accessibility tools to access Copilot. You can use the speech to text. You can ask it to read out and so on. So Microsoft want Copilot to be fair and safe and secure for you. So just to finish off this section about data security and what Copilot is before I go on to some more interesting subject, that Microsoft 365 is the data that Copilot uses. We say grounded in your business data. So what it means is that Copilot isn't just trawling through everything inside the large language model to try and answer your question. It actually uses your data, and that is in the context of the logged on user. So all the good stuff that you're using to protect your data in Microsoft 365, Copilot will respect that. So anything you've got for data security, Copilot will use that as well. So the other thing is that the data will never leave your tenant, and your data won't train the large language models. It's very easy to use because it's in the tools that you're using day to day. It's in all the Microsoft 365 apps. And it actually doesn't matter if you're actually on a Windows 10 or 11 or a Mac or iPhone. Those apps have a Copilot button built in. The point of Copilot isn't to replace you or do your job or anything. You have control of what to ask Copilot, what to do with the data it gives you, whether you can use it, whether you get rid of it. You can ask it more questions, and it will help you. But ultimately, it's you who's doing the job, and it's you who's owning the data. So the other thing about Copilot is that I mentioned about GPT-4 and GPT-4 Turbo. Copilot is going to continue evolving. Microsoft and OpenAI are investing heavily into it. So as new large language models are released and the testing happens, it will then be available to you as part of Copilot for Microsoft 365. So how can Copilot for Microsoft 365 make your life easier? Well, the main thing is that we're talking about creating documents. We can quickly draft a document instead of staring at a blank page. We can get that first draft done, and then we can start refining it, doing the thing that you're good at, which is putting in the details, putting in the technical content, or changing it to suit the way you write. Creativity. If you've written something and you think that maybe it was a bit stagnant, boring, whatever, you could get Copilot to basically just be creative and write you something else. There's more that you can do, and I'll show you in a bit inside the Copilot app, where you can change things like you want it to be precise or you want it to be creative. And then if you've got some text, you've written it, and you want it to just like reword it, it can reword it quite quickly for you. So
Hingy, just
yeah,
on the, I guess this question is probably aimed at the first two of those points. Can Copilot use companies' own branding?
yes.
When
Yeah,
yeah,
so it's not like something like Templify, but if you're actually using something like PowerPoint, you can actually use your PowerPoint templates. You have to have opened something in the PowerPoint template, but you also have to have shared your templates within SharePoint so that you can use them. But the thing that it doesn't do, it won't create images as such, and it won't fill in. If you've got some like boilerplate stuff and you just want it to fill in the details like tables and things, it doesn't do that. So it's a bit of a yes and no answer, really. It may change. This is feedback that was given to Microsoft at an event I attended recently. Can it respect our templates a bit more? And they said that it is something that they'll be working on.
great, thanks.
You're welcome. So I talked about the work trend index earlier. That short URL will take you to the actual report. But the main thing I wanted you to get from this slide is that overwhelmingly people said that Copilot saved them time. It made them more productive. It made responding to queries and tasks a lot quicker. But I won't read all of these. The document, the work trend index is quite big. But Microsoft overwhelmingly used this to say, right, the rest of you can actually benefit from this. The early adopters did, and I'll let that scroll for a bit. But if anyone's got any more questions while that's doing that. Okay, so I'll just move on to what we can do in Copilot. So these are just some very, very basic ideas of what you can do with Copilot. The prompts at the bottom, but if you go to Copilot Lab itself can give you like a lot more prompts and a lot more ideas of things that you can do. So these are just 10. What I use it most for is I'll turn on Copilot when I'm in a Teams meeting, and it saves me having to type notes when I should be listening to and talking to my customer. I could just ask Copilot to give me the transcript at the end, and then I can ask it things such as, was I given any actions? Was Jacob mentioned during the meeting? Or I can actually get it to summarize it in bullet points. So very, very useful for that. But another thing is if you've got a very, very full mailbox after returning from annual leave, get it to summarize and potentially give you priority about which things are most important that you should be dealing with first. But the most important thing is if you're going to use Copilot and you're getting an idea of what to use, share with your colleagues what you're doing, what things give you the most productivity gains and what you can get out of it completely depends on how much you're collaborating with your colleagues about what your experiences are.
Hingy, was a question just there. Does a meeting have to be recorded in order for Copilot to summarize it?
Not recorded, transcribed. Yeah, so you can record it as you want, but the moment you press the Copilot button, it starts a transcription.
Great. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. So I'm going to do a quick demo, and I'm just going to switch to a different screen. So let me just go into this. So I've actually got a virtual machine here because the main thing that you don't want to do is to do demos with your live data and show people things that you're working with on other customers. So I'm going to share this, which is a virtual machine, in the demo tenant. Here we
Just
go.
while that loads up, Hingy, just a quick question is there a trial license for this available at all?
No, Microsoft haven't given trial licenses for Copilot. I think it's something to do with the amount of compute that's required, really. It has been quite annoying for us not being able to trial it. We've had to put our hands in our pockets and get a license in order to use it and show people.
Yeah, I think one thing that we've done for some customers who purchase through CSP is that you can co-term the subscription. So while you have to buy an annual license up front, we've had customers who have subscriptions that are due in 2 months' time, and they can co-term their Copilot license to that sort of earlier deadline, so that they can reduce the amount of sort of time they have to buy up front for a Copilot license.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, thank you. Right, I'm going to show you Word and PowerPoint and how you can use Copilot to draft a document. So here I'm actually going to ask it to create a presentation about Copilot. So please, can you create a short agenda for a webinar on Copilot for Microsoft 365. I'm going to click generate, and this is where it goes off, and it uses whatever data there is out there, and it pulls things together as it says, and there'll be a document there. So this is the bit where instead of staring at a blank page and thinking like, how do I write a presentation, and just say, look, can this do it? I don't like that because it's not really giving me much text, so I'll just say, do it again. And you'll find that it gives you different results. Like two of you could be doing this at the same time because you have different data. It'll come up with different information. That's even worse. It's even shorter. So you can keep doing this, or you can actually ask it, can you actually give me more details, or can you put more text in there? So I was very, very vague with my prompt. So I'll say, please can you add more details and write me, I'll say 250 words, and then see what it says. So hopefully it'll respect that and it will write a bit more. So there we go. But you can do other things. You can ask it to emphasize it, make it more professional. There's various things you can do, but this is just a very, very basic document I've asked it to create. So I'm going to say keep it. I'm now going to save this, and I want to use this to create a presentation to then deliver a webinar. So I'm going to call it Demo 5. So what I want to do now is I want to create a PowerPoint deck based on this. So I'm going to click the Copilot button, and first things first, I can't use that file I've just created because it takes some time before SharePoint indexing and the Graph API will access it. And I'll show you that now. I call that Demo 5, and there is no Demo 5. In fact, if I type in Demo, it only gives me Demo 2, which I did yesterday. So I'm going to click on that, and then I'll click Go, and it'll create a presentation for me. So I use this when I've created something like a proposal and I want to send the proposal to the customer, but then we're going to meet with the customer and we're going to present it. to maybe the CEO as well. We've got a projector, we're sat in a room. I don't want to just get my statement of works or my proposal and show people. I want it to be a presentation. So I'll use the Word document and create a presentation. The thing that you always have to do with this is that you have to review the content and you have to make sure that it is what you want. It is a Copilot. It isn't the thing that's doing your work. So I'll look at this and I'll click on Designer. I'll change the image. I quite like this one, Data Center. I'll change some other things. That one's quite nice. But this gives you an idea how quickly you can create a presentation. It is using the same data that's inside that other file. So I will save this. And just in a kind of like Inception or Matrix sort of thing, what I now need is someone to sum this up for me. And I think Copilot's the job for this. So I'm going to click New Document. And I'll say, please, can you summarize? And then I do / oops, sorry, I forgot to press the Copilot button. Let's press it. I want to do rewrite with Copilot, hold on. It's me not doing my job properly. Right, let's try it again, press the Copilot button. There we go. Actually, what's going on here? Demo3.pbtx, generate that. And it'll use the presentation I created yesterday, which will be almost the same as what I did, and it'll create a document for it. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of what you can do in terms of creating content quite quickly. But what I'll do is I'll also show you a button down here. This is the Copilot button that you need to be in Windows 11 23H2 to have, and your administrator also has to turn this on for you. But the moment you've got a Copilot license, this button will appear. Pressing this button brings up Copilot, but it actually does the same thing as the Copilot button on the new Surface products. Surface Laptop 6 and Surface Pro 10 have a button on the keyboard that does this. So here we can do the same thing. So this is Copilot for Microsoft 365, but if I press Web, this is the actual Copilot for the web, and this is the bit where you can choose things like how accurate you want it to be. But the work one is the Copilot for Microsoft 365. So one other place I want to show you to access Copilot for Microsoft 365 is this side here, where it's trying to sign me in again. And the Copilot button here, this is the same thing. Once it appears, if I do / to look for files, it should find the same files for me. So there we go, product specification, demo 2, demo 3. So I hope that gives you an idea of some of the things you can do with Copilot. Not a lot I can show you in a limited amount of time, so I'm just going to switch back to the slide deck.
Hingy, just a question there. Can Copilot create a Power BI report based on data in Excel?
I don't know that actually. It can do things in Excel, but I've not seen Copilot for Power BI. So
that would be a separate Copilot product, and there's Copilot for Power Platform.
I think it is, yeah. I think it is that, not Copilot for Microsoft 365.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry if that I haven't really spent much time with the other Copilots. But the one thing I did want to say is that I mentioned Copilot Studio. Copilot Studio allows you to create Copilots that point to your data, and you do get a license for that as part of Copilot for Microsoft 365. But if you want to delve into the area of writing a chatbot that can respond to things based on your knowledge base, or some very, very simple question and answers about a project, Copilot Studio can do that, and you can pre-can the answers inside there. It uses the large language models, it uses the data that you've got, but you can steer it more, give it more focus. So just want to finish with, we've got another webinar about Copilot on 11th of June. This one is less about the technical aspects of it. This is all about the end user and how the end user can use it. And it's in partnership with Hable, who are our adoption and change partner. And you scan that QR code there, it should bring you the page for it. I'll leave that on the screen for a few seconds, but I'll just talk you through some of the ways we can help you with. So if you going on the Copilot journey, we can obviously help you with licensing, get you the best way to get licenses, but also we've got a number of workshops that we can do. I'll just click on the next slide now, just show you. So we've got Copilot readiness workshops, which assess your Microsoft 365 for security and make sure that your data is protected using the tools that we've talked about, but also look at your persona, the workloads that people have, and the best way that people can use Copilot. But then the other one that we have is a 10-day quick start program to get you Purview. So Purview information protection, Purview data loss prevention. Within 10 days, we'll assess your data and get you sensitivity labels, protection, all the other things that we need to have. So I'll leave this page on 2 more QR codes, an ebook from Hable, but also the Telefónica Tech QR code will take you to our website. And then I'll open the floor to any questions that we might have.
We did have a question earlier. I was sort of waiting for a time, but with Hable part up, it's probably quite a good time. Were there any tips around the adoption phase for Copilot that you could recommend?
So one thing is that when Microsoft said you needed 300 licenses to get Copilot, people bought 300 licenses when they could, and people used Copilot and they got quite a lot of success. The companies are waiting for a smaller number before they can get Copilot. Some have had quite a poor experience because they've got one Copilot license, potentially given to the wrong person, and either they're too busy or they don't have the sorts of role where they would use Word to create a lot of documents and so on. So as a result of that, they haven't had a great experience of adoption. So Microsoft do recommend that you choose carefully who you're going to give Copilot to. It has to be a good representation of the information workers within your organization. But the more of you that are there, the more likely you can have a team, have a Copilot champion, people who can share ideas, how to adopt it. But the other way is that you can talk to us and Hable can help you with the skills assessment and see how to adopt it, make sure that you are getting value from your investment.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions?
Doesn't look like there are any more questions. I think we're all good. Is that in the chat? Yeah, that's us as well. No, I think we're all good.
Excellent. Thank you everyone for your time this afternoon. If you do have any other questions afterwards, get in touch with us. We're here to help, and Copilot can hopefully save you time as it saved us, and we do find it a very, very enjoyable product to use.
Thanks everyone. Have a good day.
Thank you. See everybody.